The forklifts died down first. Then came the murmurs. Marcus Reyes stood on the dock floor at Falcon Freight, gripping his phone instead of his badge, while Damon Vance read out the termination notice like a man enjoying it. 9 years gone in 4 sentences. Marcus didn't argue. He unpinned his badge, set it on the folding table, and walked into the parking lot. He dialed one number, let it ring 3 times, Marsh and Cole. An authorization code. Please activate the control clause. 20 minutes later, Damon Vance's phone started ringing. He would never sit in that office again. Stay with this. The truth here takes a while to catch up with the man who buried it. That morning had started like every other morning for 9 years. Quiet, and a coffee maker that groaned before it poured. Marcus was up by 5, flipping pancakes by 5:15 for a 9-year-old who wouldn't wake for another 40 minutes. He liked the stillness, liked having something to do with his hands before the day, asked more of him. Lily came down at 6, braids done herself, backpack on, and studied her father with the seriousness only children manage before breakfast. "You look tired," she said. "I'm always tired," Marcus said. "Part of the job? Which job? Doc or Dad?" "Both. They don't take turns." She grinned, and Marcus let himself have that small, warm thing before the day turned into whatever it would become. He found her missing shoe under the couch, where it always ended up, dropped her at school at 7:15, and drove to Falcon Freight Distribution on Dayton's east side, where he'd worked the docks 9 years and supervised them the last 6. Nobody at Falcon Freight knew what Marcus had built before Dayton. Nothing about Reyes Capital, the blind trust that carried his name only on documents locked in a Columbus law office. Or the 62% stake he held in Corvus Logistics Group, the parent company that owned Falcon Freight, the way a man owns a coat he rarely wears. They knew him as the supervisor who showed up first and left last, who remembered which drivers were going through something, who never raised his voice because he never needed to. Sienna Marlowe knew him only as a line item. She was 36, regional vice president of operations for Corvus. Having inherited the Dayton branch 8 months earlier, along with a stack of unfinished performance reviews, she walked the floor that Monday in a blazer that didn't belong near diesel fumes, clipboard in hand. "Reyes," she said, finding Marcus near bay, for, "Your numbers are clean again this quarter. How do you keep this floor faster than every other branch and still pass every safety audit?" "I don't do anything special," Marcus said. "I just don't cut corners when nobody's watching." She almost smiled. Almost. Damon Vance arrived an hour later, and the temperature of the building changed the way it does before an unannounced storm. National VP of Operations out of Columbus, he wore his authority like cologne, too much impossible to ignore. He found Sienna in the break room, folder already open. "We have a problem. Reyes's safety file, 2 flagged incidents this year. Forklift near miss in March, unsecured pallet in June. Corporate wants it handled before the board review." Sienna frowned. "I've never heard about either. He's the most careful supervisor on this floor. The paperwork says otherwise, and paperwork is what the board reads." He tapped the folder twice. "I need a termination signed by end of day. I'd like to talk to him first. There's no time, and frankly, it isn't necessary." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're new here. I'd hate for your first quarter to be remembered for missing a deadline over a warehouse worker's feelings." She wanted to push back harder, but 8 months into a job she'd fought for, with a national VP using compliance like a threat, she felt her argument give way. She read the file twice, something snagged. A wrongness in the dates she didn't have time to chase, then signed it the way people sign things they've been told they have no choice about. Hands steady, stomach not. She found Marcus at bay for 20 minutes before the shift ended and made herself say it to his face. "Marcus, Reyes, I'm sorry. Effective immediately. Your employment is terminated." "I don't fully understand this file, but I have to act on it." Marcus looked at her, not with anger, just tired recognition, like a man watching a storm he'd seen building finally break. "I understand," he said. "You're not the one who wrote that file." He unclipped his badge. He didn't ask for an explanation, because he already suspected he wouldn't get an honest one from Damon Vance. And something in Sienna's face told him she wasn't lying to him, only repeating a lie someone else had handed her. He walked to the parking lot under a gray Ohio sky and dialed a number he'd kept saved for years, hoping he'd never need it. The lawyer's voice was clipped, already moving. "Mr. Reyes, it's been a while. Too long, Marcus said. I need the control clause activated. Corvus, Logistics, Falcon Freight, subsidiary. Today, a pause, a chair rolling back, papers shuffling. You understand what that triggers. This isn't quiet anymore. The board gets notified within the hour. Your name becomes visible to people who currently believe you sell insurance in Michigan. I know what it triggers. Why now you've had 2 other terminations. You could have contested. Convene the board in Columbus tomorrow morning. I want Sienna Marlowe there. She's the one who signed it, and she deserves to hear why from someone other than the man who handed her the pen. Understood. I'll have the notices out within the hour. Marcus looked back at the building, the place where he'd spent 9 years building something small and honest with his hands after the rest of his life had gotten too large to hold. Because this time, it isn't about me, he said. Somebody wrote lies into a file with my name on it, and I want to know who and why, before they do it to somebody who can't make a call like this one. What almost nobody at Falcon Freight knew was that Marcus had built Reyes Capital from a garage in Kettering 20 years earlier, back when his wife Anna was still alive, still laughing at his optimism over kitchen table spreadsheets. The company grew fast and acquired a controlling interest in a regional logistics operation called Corvus, back when it was 3 trucks and a warehouse lease. Marcus structured his ownership through a blind trust from the start. Paranoia, at the time, foresight now. His attorneys argued against it for months, but Marcus insisted, and over the years, the trust let him walk away from board meetings when he needed to, let him disappear without anyone asking where the money had gone. Then Anna died a car accident on a wet road 18 months back, and Marcus found himself in a house too big for 2 people, staring at a 9-year-old who needed a father who showed up in normal clothes at a normal hour. He'd taken the Falcon Freight job when Lily was born, wanting to be present for bath time and school pickups instead of earnings calls. Losing Anna only deepened his resolve to stay put. He put the trust further on autopilot and held onto the loading dock job under a name that was legally his but functionally invisible, wanting Lily to believe effort mattered more than inheritance. He'd never planned to use the control clause. It sat in his file like a fire extinguisher behind glass, there in case of an emergency he hoped would never come. Across town, Sienna sat in her car outside Falcon Freight long after her shift ended, replaying the look on Marcus's face when she'd told him he was done. It wasn't anger that stayed with her, it was how little he'd fought it. She thought about the dates again. March. June, almost certain Marcus had been out sick the week of the March incident, home with Lily during a stomach flu. A detail she remembered because he'd mentioned it once, embarrassed about missing a shift. She sat with that a long time before driving home, uneasy in a way she couldn't yet name. Alicia Ford found the discrepancy the next morning, though she wasn't looking for it. The HR coordinator at the Dayton branch, 31, quiet in the way people are quiet. Once they've learned speaking up, rarely changes anything. Pulling Marcus's file for final paperwork, she noticed the metadata on the March incident report, created in June, backdated to look like March. Her hands went still. The same pattern showed on the second incident. Both reports generated within 11 minutes of each other 3 weeks ago, long after either alleged incident happened. She should have taken it straight to Sienna. Instead, she sat with it an hour, weighing what it would cost her to speak against what it would cost her conscience to stay quiet. Her mortgage, the 2 years before her pension vested, how easily a woman who noticed the wrong things could become the subject of the next backdated file. She thought, too, of Marcus, who in 6 years had never once made her feel small. In the end, her conscience won, though it took until lunch to work up the nerve to knock on Sienna's door. "I need to show you something," Alicia said, laptop under her arm. "It's about Marcus Reyes's file." Sienna waved her in and shut the door herself, which told Alicia something before either spoke again. They didn't get far. Damon Vance appeared in the hallway less than 10 minutes later, letting himself in, his smile arriving a half-second before he did. "Alicia, don't you have exit paperwork to process?" "Whatever this is, it's not your department." His voice stayed pleasant, which somehow made it worse. "I'd hate for anyone here to get tangled up in something above their pay grade, especially somebody 2 years from a pension vesting date." Alicia closed her laptop and left, hands shaking slightly, the metadata screenshots still saved to her desktop, unsure if she'd just protected herself or failed the one person who'd never once been unkind to her. That evening, Marcus sat at the kitchen table while Lily did homework across from him. The companionable silence that had become their language since Anna died. She looked up, Pencil paused. "You didn't go to work today?" "No," Marcus said. "I didn't. Are you in trouble?" He considered softening it, then decided she deserved better. "Somebody made a mistake about me. A big one. I'm going to fix it, but it might take a few days, and it might get a little loud before it gets quiet again." Lily studied him the way she studied him over pancakes. "Are we going to be okay?" "We're always going to be okay," Marcus said, and for the first time all day, he believed it himself. After Lily went to bed, Marcus sat alone on the dark back porch, the way he did on nights that stirred something old in him. He thought of Anna, of the version of this fight she'd have relished, how she used to tease him for hiding his own success like it embarrassed him. She'd never understood why he wanted to be invisible. He hadn't fully understood it himself until she was gone, and invisibility had become the only place he felt steady enough to raise their daughter. Tomorrow he'd have to be visible again, in front of a room that had spent years assuming he didn't exist. He wasn't looking forward to it, but he thought of the backdated file with his name on it, and knew he wasn't going to let it stand. Sienna's phone rang the next morning before she'd reached her office. A Columbus number. "Miss Marlowe, this is the office of Marsh & Cole. We represent a controlling shareholder of Corvus Logistics Group, who has requested your presence at an emergency board session tomorrow at 9, Columbus headquarters. A shareholder requested me specifically." "Yes, ma'am. Your attendance is not optional." She sat in her car 5 full minutes before trusting herself to drive, the uneasy feeling from 2 nights before blooming into dread. The drive took an hour and 10 minutes, and Sienna spent it rehearsing explanations for a meeting she still didn't understand, a compliance failure. A merger she hadn't been briefed on, maybe her own termination dressed as a courtesy. The Corvus headquarters occupied 4 floors downtown, and when she stepped off the elevator into the executive conference room, she found it half full. Board members she recognized from annual reports, others only from press photos, all wearing the stillness of people told something urgent without being told what. Damon Vance was there too, jacket buttoned, projecting calm, though Sienna caught the tightness around his eyes. "Does anyone know what this is about?" she asked. "Routine governance review," Damon said, too quickly, but nothing felt routine. An unopened folder at every seat, a dark projector screen, silence. Sienna opened her folder more from nerves than purpose, and the first page stopped her cold, a shareholder registry. Corvus Logistics Group, controlling interest, 62%, held by the Reyes Family Trust. Trustee of record, Marsh & Cole, LLP, beneficial owner, M. Reyes. Her stomach dropped. She thought of the man she'd fired 2 days earlier, calm and unbothered, saying, "I understand," like it cost him nothing. She turned to the board member beside her. "This Reyes in the registry, is that Marcus Reyes, founder of Reyes Capital? Very private man, hasn't attended a board function in almost 2 years, not since his wife passed." "Why?" Sienna didn't answer. She was too busy replaying every interaction she'd ever had with the dock's supervisor from Bay 4, finding nothing, just a man who showed up early and left late, never letting on that he owned the floor he swept. The board chair called the room to order, and a senior partner from Marsh & Cole walked through a financial audit conducted quietly over the past 48 hours. Inflated freight contracts across 3 branches, all approved under Damon Vance's signature. All routed through a vendor, partly owned by Damon's brother-in-law. Over 18 months, the markup had siphoned nearly $900,000 from margins the board had been told were shrinking due to fuel costs. Damon's calm cracked. "This is absurd. I've run national operations 6 years without a single complaint. You've run it well enough to avoid scrutiny," the partner said. "That's not the same as running it honestly." The next slide showed 2 personnel files, both Marcus Reyes's, both safety incidents backdated, both signed off within the same 11-minute window 3 weeks earlier, the same week. Damon had visited Dayton for what he'd told Sienna was a routine inspection. "We believe Mr. Vance manufactured cause to terminate an employee whose ownership stake he was unaware of, to remove a supervisor whose record-keeping was making certain freight discrepancies harder to hide." Sienna sat very still, finally understanding why her signature had felt so wrong. She'd been the tool someone else used to swing the hammer, never knowing whose hand was really on the handle. Damon tried one more angle. If documents were falsified, that's an HR matter. Miss Marlowe signed the termination. Every head turned to Sienna. "I signed what I was told was accurate," she said, steadier than she felt. "I've worked here 8 months. Mr. Vance has worked here 6 years. I'd asked this board to consider whose signature actually built that file. The partner nodded, unmoved, and reached for one more folder. There's one more matter the board should hear. The side door opened, and a man walked in wearing a plain gray jacket, nothing like the suits around the table. For a moment, nobody recognized him until Sienna did, all at once, her breath catching. Marcus Reyes crossed the room without hurry and took a seat at the head of the table, like furniture he'd simply been away from a while. He looked at Sienna first, briefly, then nodded to the partner. Go ahead, let her finish it. Sienna opened her mouth, an apology forming, but Marcus raised a hand, not unkindly. Not yet. There's somebody else who has more to say than either of us. He gestured to the door, and Alicia Ford stepped in, laptop clutched to her chest like a shield. Miss Ford found the discrepancy in my file 2 days ago, Marcus said, and was told by Mr. Vance it wasn't her department. I'd like the board to hear what she found. Alicia's hands trembled, connecting her laptop, but her voice steadied once the first screenshot appeared. Metadata timestamps in stark, undeniable rows, backdated creation dates, the 11-minute window, both reports describing dock conditions that hadn't existed on the days claimed. I checked the March date against the shift schedule. Marcus Reyes called out sick that entire week. He wasn't even in the building the day this report says he caused a forklift near miss. A board member leaned forward. Why didn't you bring this to the board directly? I tried my regional VP. I was told it wasn't my department. I didn't have a way to reach this room on my own. There's more, Alicia said, finding a courage she hadn't known she had. The freight vendor tied to Mr. Vance's brother-in-law, I cross-referenced it against dock intake logs going back 14 months. Every shipment through that vendor was logged personally by Marcus Reyes because he insisted on double-checking incoming freight weights himself. If anyone was going to notice the numbers didn't add up, it was always going to be him. I think that's exactly why Mr. Vance wanted him gone. Damon shot up, chair scraping back. This is a coordinated attack. She's been coached. He's been coached. He pointed at Marcus. You planted an employee to spy on operations, and now you're staging a public humiliation because your ego couldn't take being treated. Like a normal worker, I wasn't spying on anyone, Marcus said, even unhurried. I was raising my daughter. You made that harder than it needed to be. And then, you tried to erase a man's 9-year record because he was better at his job than you were at hiding yours. The board voted immediately for Damon's suspension. Unanimous, faster than it had taken Alicia to load her laptop. Security escorted him out. He didn't go quietly, insisting the board would regret trusting a warehouse supervisor and a nervous HR coordinator over a man who'd built half the company. Nobody answered him. True to the promise made in a parking lot 2 days earlier, he never sat in that office again. Sienna watched with a strange, hollow feeling, relief and shame refusing to separate. When the room cleared, she found herself alone with Marcus. I don't know where to start, she said. You don't have to. You believed the wrong person, and you weren't the only one. I still fired you. To your face, you're not wrong for trusting someone. You had every reason to trust, you said. You're only wrong if you stop trusting your own judgment because of it. That file bothered you before Alicia ever walked in. I could hear it in your voice the day you signed it. Sienna looked at him differently now. Not the anonymous supervisor she'd fired, not the name on a shareholder registry, but a man who'd waited 9 years for a fight he hadn't wanted and only picked it up when someone tried to hurt more than just him. 3 days later, Sienna drove back to Dayton with a folder of her own, a formal offer of reinstatement, full back pay, and a written apology. She found Marcus at home, a modest ranch house with a basketball hoop over the garage and a training wheel bicycle against the porch rail. He read the offer, unhurried, then set it down. I appreciate this. I don't want the supervisor job back. It's your company. You could take any job. That's exactly why I don't want it. The moment I go back, with everyone knowing who I am, it stops being a job and starts being a performance. He paused. But I'd take a different offer, consultant for the Dayton branch, rebuilding the safety reporting system so nobody's file can be quietly rewritten again. And I'd want you running it. You're offering me a promotion 2 days after I fired you. I'm offering you a job because you're good at it. The firing was somebody else's lie. I try not to hold people accountable for other people's lies. Lily wandered in, stopping short at the stranger. Is this the trouble you were talking about? This is the trouble getting fixed, Marcus said. Sienna, this is my daughter Lily. "Lily, this is Miss Marlowe. She used to be my boss." "Used to be," Lily repeated. "Delighted. Are you staying for dinner? Dad makes really good spaghetti when he's not stressed." Sienna glanced at Marcus, expecting rescue, and found instead an expression that looked a little like hope he wasn't ready to name. "I'd like that," she said. "He doesn't mind," Lily said, heading for the pantry. "He never minds when people stay." The investigation into Damon closed 5 weeks later. Corvus terminated him for cause, forfeiting his severance, and referred the fraud findings to the district attorney. Sienna read the memo, standing in the same break room where Damon had once called it fabricated file, just paperwork. She felt no satisfaction, only a quiet settling, a door closing on something that never should have been left open. Over the following weeks, Sienna relocated her office to Dayton 3 days a week, and she and Marcus rebuilt the safety protocol, cross-checking every file Damon had touched over 2 years, restoring 3 other employees whose records had been quietly altered. A forklift operator named Dexter passed over for promotion on a fabricated tardiness log, and a young mother whose maternity leave had been mischaracterized as unauthorized absence. Each correction mattered exactly as much as the first. Alicia Ford was promoted to branch HR director, a title she grew into within a month, steady and sharp. Corvus instituted an anonymous audit line through an outside firm, so no record could be altered without a second set of eyes verifying the date. Sienna presented it to the board herself, and for the first time in 8 months, nobody made her feel like she was borrowing a seat that belonged to someone else. Marcus and Sienna kept working alongside each other long after the crisis passed, the kind of proximity that builds trust in increments, too small to notice, until they've become something larger. He fixed the chain on Lily's bicycle one Saturday while Sienna graded vendor contracts on the porch steps, and Lily asked, without ceremony, if Sienna wanted to stay for pancakes the next morning too. She found she very much did. She noticed things about the house that said more than Marcus ever did aloud: a photograph of Anna on the hallway shelf, dusted but never moved. A kitchen drawer still holding a woman's handwriting on recipe cards nobody used, but nobody could throw away. She never asked directly, letting it exist alongside whatever she and Marcus were becoming, understanding now that grief and new beginnings could share the same house without one crowding out the other. One evening, dishes drying in the rack, Sienna told Marcus something she'd told no one at Corvus, that she'd taken the Dayton job after a divorce. That had quietly gutted her confidence. 6 years of being told her ambition was the problem. She'd fought for this branch to prove she could run something without anyone rewriting the terms over her shoulder. "That's part of why I hate that I signed that termination," she admitted. "It felt like I'd become the thing I left." Marcus didn't offer easy comfort, he just listened. "You didn't become anything," he said finally. "You caught it. Most people wouldn't have noticed the dates were wrong. You did, even before you knew why it mattered." It wasn't a grand moment. No music, no touch, but something settled between them that night, a trust that didn't need announcing. Neither said anything about what was growing, not through the shared coffee at 7 each morning, or the long drives back from Columbus, or the evening Marcus patiently taught her to throw a spiral to a 9-year-old who wanted to play catch before dinner. It lived in the small things: Marcus pouring her coffee before his own, Sienna leaving her blazer in the car to walk the dock floor in jeans, Lily drawing 3 figures in her family pictures instead of 2. On a Friday evening, 6 weeks after the board meeting that appended both their lives, Marcus and Sienna stood together near Bay 4, watching the last truck pull out under a sky-gone orange at the edges. The warehouse had changed since Damon's suspension, not in any way a stranger would notice, but in every way that mattered. Reports were filed the day they happened. Trust, once broken, had been rebuilt one honest signature at a time. Sienna had a folder under her arm, nothing more urgent than next quarter's maintenance schedule. She'd started carrying fewer folders that felt like verdicts, and more that felt like plans. "You ever miss it?" she asked. "Being just the guy who fixed the pallets nobody else wanted to fix." "Some days," Marcus admitted, "but I don't miss pretending the rest of it didn't exist." That got heavier every year, not lighter. Lily came running down the loading ramp, backpack still on, and grabbed one of each of their hands without a word. The way children do when they've decided something the adults haven't caught up to yet. Marcus looked at Sienna over their daughter's head, and she looked back, and for a long moment neither said anything at all, because nothing needed saying. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It hadn't been for weeks. He hadn't made that call from the parking lot to reclaim a company, or win a fight, or prove a point to a man who'd never earned the truth. He'd made it because somewhere between a coffee maker groaning at 5 in the morning and a 9-year-old asking if they were going to be okay, he'd remembered exactly what was still worth protecting, and he wasn't going to let anyone quietly take it from him again.